Welcome to 99th Monkey Liberty News for Wednesday, July 2nd, 2014. I have some old business this morning, referring back to yesterday, the Facebook study. RT has an article, Facebook Mind Control Experiments linked to DoD research on civil unrest. And there is also an Infowars story on the same issue. Cover-up surrounding Pentagon funding of Facebook's psychological experiment. And there's a question there, but there has been a link. In fact, it is actually being reported also by Bloomberg. Facebook's news feed experiment probed by UK regulators. So this is big news. It's on Bloomberg. So why would something like this come out? Is this, I mentioned yesterday there have been some Supreme Court victories. Are we being lulled to sleep? Are we being, handed a piece of candy with one hand, while the other hand is planning to paddle us or something? I don't know. But I'm wondering why this issue has received so much attention, even in mainstream media. And it's great that these issues are finally coming to light. More people are becoming aware. But I'm wondering if this is meant as a distraction to prevent alternative news people from, and freedom fighters, from seeing something else that's going on, focusing on the wrong thing. Could that be really? I don't know what the diversion could be diverting us from. From the Telegraph, Rolf Harris, CBS defends decision to keep suspects' identities secret. I learned about this in a tweet from Jason Burmas, that there is a push to, in England, when well-known people have been suspects, their identity has been kept secret. Now this question is presented: is it better to be public when celebrities are suspects, so that more witnesses can come forward? And of course, this is all led to the scandal in Great Britain surrounding Jimmy Savile and many celebrities and politicians who are pedophiles. And this is an ongoing issue in the UK, and just a bit of interest here. To be really honest, I can kind of understand someone being kept secret as a suspect. What if, anybody can accuse anybody of anything, and someone's reputation is destroyed. However, if there is strong evidence, I suppose that it's a positive thing for this information to be public, again, so that more witnesses can come forward. Interestingly enough, in the Old Testament, the laws were very, very strict. There were a lot of capital offenses in the Old Testament. People could be stoned for, even blasphemy. But there was no circumstantial evidence. There had to be 2 or 3 witnesses to a crime, and very hard evidence. And I think that in our justice system, the so-called justice system, we've lost that. What other significant news is breaking? What other significant information is coming forth this week? Well, from RT, Cryptome claims all Snowden files will be published in July to avert a war. So if all of this information is going to come out, there's a huge number of files. They may, if Snowden and Glenn Greenwald aren't 100% above board. It's possible that this information would all be released at once, so that makes it kind of difficult to process, and will require a lot of focus and attention to process all this information if indeed all these files are published in July. So that is certainly a bit of breaking news that will be breaking to keep an eye on. Alex Jones yesterday had a really interesting show. David Knight was the host, but the Infowars was really a very packed show yesterday. And one of the issues they mentioned is diseased immigrants flooding over the border. And yesterday there were protests in California because of the open borders and the immigrants flooding across. And there was a lot of information on Infowars yesterday that points to the fact that many of the immigrants who are coming across are what they call OTM, other than Mexican. And they interviewed some people at the border yesterday, and there's a great concern that there are many people coming across the borders who are not even Mexican, some of whom are Middle Eastern and may very well be genuine terrorist people who want to do harm to the American people. So very interesting developments, really a lot of significant things going on right now. And hopefully, the scales are beginning to tip. People are becoming more aware. And this is a time when we all need, I think, to be very cautious in how we process the information and not react to things, but have a measured response. Just because I believe that, as I said about the IRS information yesterday, it seems as if the cabal, the social engineers, may be trying to provoke the American people into open rebellion. This was another really interesting portion of Alex's show yesterday. A diplomat was interviewed by David Knight, and he was talking extensively about Iraq, the history of what's gone on there, and he talked about Blackwater. He called Blackwater a frat house with guns. That's not funny. Very serious, really. Very serious issue. There are a lot of potential problems there. But here's an interesting clip from that interview. Blackwater threatened to kill State Department official in Iraq. John Rappaport wrote about yesterday, this blog went up, about a cancer treatment that has been very successful, deleting a promising cancer treatment. And there are other cancer treatments that interest me more than this particular one, Hydrazine Sulfate, that he wrote about yesterday. But it's an interesting story because a lady who took Hydrazine Sulfate and was actually cured of cancer, refused chemotherapy, and became a very high-profile case of a person taking Hydrazine Sulfate. She also chose radiation to reduce one of her many tumors, a growth around her bile duct. Dr. Gold said the dose of radiation should be small because Hydrazine Sulfate would enhance the effect of the radiation, but the radiologist gave her the full dose instead, burned her liver, and caused later scarring. Overall, Keaton recovered. In fact, a year after her predicted death rate, her cancer was in full remission. The Hydrazine Sulfate was a remarkable success. Guccione ran ads in Penthouse asking for families of the dead victims in the NCI experiment to come forward and join a class action suit against NCI. Guccione estimated there had been 600 victims in the NCI clinical test. In October 1997, Kathy Keaton, who had recovered using hydrazine sulfate, went into a major and well-respected New York hospital for surgery. From all accounts, this operation had nothing to do with cancer. Complications occurred. She died. Well, they're called complications, right? But watch the movie Coma sometime. Most of America assumed she had succumbed to cancer, further proof that hydrazine sulfate did not work. But of course, that is not the real story. And really, as I said, I am including this in today's news not because I think hydrazine sulfate is great, but just because I want to reinforce and remind everybody here how the evil system works to protect itself. They're very willing to sacrifice human life. And I have some additional links that are not open this morning just because I just, if I open this many links, Flash goes crazy and I have a tremendous struggle. But I wanted to reference these. Medical police stayed at U.S. immigration camps as doctors threatened with arrest for talking about infectious disease. And that just more on the immigration, another aspect of what is going on there, that people have been threatened with arrest if they tell the truth about what's happening at the borders. And another natural news article, prescription drug use now causing more driving fatalities than alcohol. Wow. China's month-long block of Google hits businesses. This is interesting. It is difficult to be without Google, and of course I use StartPage, but even StartPage is dependent upon Google for the information. I have a very fond hope that at some point there can be a more neutral version of Google, a search engine that is not a government entity behind closed doors, that isn't backed by the NSA, and maybe even isn't funded by ads. Maybe I dream, I don't know, but it's the conclusion of this article is that it really is necessary to have a good search engine in order for businesses to thrive online. But Google, is not a good search engine. I mean, that you have to pay if you have a business to be found. And as I've mentioned many times, it does not give me the returns that I'm looking for. Articles that I know are there, I do very specific searches and do not yield the articles that I'm looking for. Moving on to this from Coyote Blog, another plea to global warming alarmists on the phrase climate deniers. Stop calling me and other skeptics climate deniers. No one denies that there is a climate. It is a stupid phrase. And I'm addressing this partly because I have included some natural news articles this morning. And in most respects, I'm still seeing them as a good source. But there are people who feel very let down by natural news, who kind of feel betrayed by some paths that they have taken. That people feel that they've kind of become a little bit of turncoats. I am not strongly sharing that opinion, but I do want to mention, as I was on their website this morning, I noticed an article about the benefits of being vegetarian. And one of the benefits they noted was that if you're vegetarian, you help reduce the release of greenhouse gases. So I'm not sure if Natural News, if Mike Adams is accepting that position that we do have greenhouse gas-based climate change. That would be disappointing. I have noticed recently there are people who, I once thought were true blue, who are beginning to kind of dilute their message a little bit. And I think it's great if, we don't all have to walk in lockstep, but this whole carbon-based pollution issue is really a pretty big foundation stone to the liberty movement and alternative news, that there is deception about CO2 related climate change. And as I said, that's a pretty big foundation stone. So I was a little disappointed that Mike Adams had an article on Natural News about greenhouse gas climate change. And it's possible that he just gives free rein to the people who write articles for him, who work for him, and this comes from them. And there was an issue with David Icke that I didn't mention, really kind of separate from David Icke in a way. He had his television network and entrusted it to a couple of guys who pretty much ran it into the ground. So, Alex Jones seems like he keeps a really tight rein on everything that's going on at Infowars. Different people have different management styles, and I'm beginning to wonder if some people who have a looser management style are maybe on some levels being betrayed by people who are working for them, that they either are intentional plants, or they're just misguided, misdirected, whatever. But all that just to emphasize how important it is to continue to filter everything. And if there's a source that seems to be a trusted source, something comes out that's contrary or doesn't sound quite right, it's important to exercise our gray matter and evaluate what's being fed to us. I'm moving towards some good news here from the Wall Street Journal. New York court strikes down cyberbullying law. Ruling lauds intent of legislation but sees it as too broad, violating First Amendment. Oh, the courts all of a sudden are remembering the Bill of Rights. Isn't that wonderful? I hope it is. As I said, I hope it's not candy in one hand and a paddle in the other as soon as we turn our back. But there's another article here from the Washington Times. Obama racking up judicial losses as Supreme Court rules on Obamacare union dues. Has somebody told these guys the justices to back off, to uphold the Bill of Rights, because people are just becoming aware it's too blatant? I really, it's difficult to say, but I guess we kind of have to accept this as good news. At least, call it as we see it. Call it as it lays. This appears to be good news. And here is more good news from Natural News. Surviving a nuclear catastrophe may soon be easier. Researcher invents formula that blocks radioactive cesium-137 contamination in food and water. Thank you for tuning in for today's 99th Monkey Liberty News. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. Hoping that you will love one another, take care, and enforce the Bill of Rights.